I'm Steve Neal, and this is Timbo. Thanks for joining us here on A Catastrophic Event for the first part of my interview with my friend and gardener extraordinaire, David Moses, a.k.a. Farmer Dave. In today's episode, we talk about food storage. According to Statista, food prices have increased 25% since 2020. So, is buying extra food today a good financial move? What types of food storage is available, and is it really important to do when you can drive to a local grocery store and pick up whatever you need? Hi, I'm Steve Neal, and welcome to A Catastrophic Event. Today's guest is Farmer Dave. He grew up on a farm in upstate New York, planting, raising, and harvesting fruits and vegetables from an early age. He now resides in eastern Washington, where he has an extensive raised bed. He has been featured on YouTube videos showcasing the development of raised gardens and harvesting fruits and vegetables in the dry climate of eastern Washington. And today's episode is food preparation, food storage. Should we do it? I mean, is it practical? Is it something we need to do in today's world? And if we do, how do we do it? What are the ways we get into it? What are things we should do? Places we should buy food from, whatever. And so I have asked Dave to help me out with this, and we're going to ask a series of questions, and we hope you will enjoy the show. So, first question is, to me, it should be obvious that food prices are increasing at an alarming rate. Do you see food storage as a way to hedge those rising costs?
Well, that's a great question, Steve. You know, food storage is something that everyone should be doing right now. There was a segment on YouTube. You see it frequently. It's actually in a commercial form, and it's a farmer in Texas. He had a wipeout of his herd of cattle. And his quote was, people talk about the price of food, but at some point, there isn't going to be any food. When you go to the grocery store, the shelves might be empty. What will you do when that happens, or if it does happen, or even if it's only a temporary event? How are you going to handle that? I akin food storage to being a lot like a spare tire in the car, right?
Right.
You know, it's something that you hope you never have to pull out, because you're going to get your hands covered in grease, and you're going to have to do some labor that you weren't expecting. But guess what? It'll pull you through when you need it. So a lot of folks I know are really sensitive to the price of foods. To get back to your question, and aren't we all? I mean, you go to Costco, you see alarming rises in the price of food. You told me today that the price of eggs was what, $4 a dozen?
Yeah.
And those aren't organic eggs, probably.
Right. Yeah. They're just the free range, whatever.
Yeah. So think about that. What were they 4 years ago? Before
Much
COVID.
less, about a buck
Yeah.
a dozen. And then like olive oil now for the 2 1-liter gallons, $60. What, a year ago it was like $27, $28, $29 for the same thing. So it almost doubled.
Right.
And I look at food storage as an incredible way to invest. Like some people buy stocks and bonds or whatever, but these things go up. You control them; they're yours. And when you go to the store next week and the price of olive oil is now $70 or $80 for that same amount, well, you just saved $10 or $20. So I look at it as a definite way to hedge against inflation.
For sure. And, one of the things about inflation is, okay, the price is going up and up and up. At some point, the supply won't be there because of it. people just won't be able to afford it. They won't supply it. And then you've got gaps.
Right.
And you're not able to predict sometimes what that's going to be. So, should people, put food ahead? They absolutely should, because it's really an insurance policy,
right,
in a way of speaking.
Right.
So,
what other reasons can you think of that people might want to put food up? Like you had mentioned, food availability. I have noticed another thing that's very alarming too is the quantity in the can. One example I like to give is we buy freeze-dried peaches, and the brand we used to buy was, when we first started back in 2008, there was 9.5 ounces of freeze-dried peaches, and they were $20 for that can. Well, if you buy that same can today, it's $50 for that can, and you get 6.5 ounces. So not only has it 2.5 times the cost, but
right,
you dropped almost a third of the amount of product.
Yeah, that shrinkflation is what that is, and it's a real deal. We see it all the time now. Knowing where your next meal is coming from is a key human need, and we have what I think you and I have talked about, normalcy bias.
Right.
For the last however many, maybe 100 years in this country, folks have gotten into a pattern of behavior where they just go to the grocery store, it's there, they pay cash or they use a credit card, and they walk out with the item. What happens if that's not an option? What are you going to do? So a lot of folks are looking towards preparation, either in terms of food storage, or they're looking at doing their own gardens. When I drive around Spokane, if you go through the neighborhoods, you're seeing more and more lawns ripped out these days and more raised beds going in.
Right.
It's a very real phenomenon, and it's all the above that we just talked about causing that, for sure.
Well, one thing too is kind of off topic, but what are they putting in your food? I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of nervous of having cockroaches and crickets and stuff inserted in my food. One of our friends posted a thing where in Dole peaches, they're using crickets in peaches. I've never even considered that, but it's a real thing. And there's all kinds of other chemicals that are being added to our food to reduce the cost for the companies. Well, a lot of those have never had long-term studies, or they're outlawed in other countries. So what exactly are they doing to our food? I kind of feel that food storage, putting it up, you have control over your food, what you're eating. And obviously, by my figure, I like to eat, so I like to control it.
Well, you're exactly right. Take some things that you never think of, like canned tuna. Who would think there's anything in a can of tuna besides salt and tuna and water? No, there's a preservative in there now. Take a look. Go to I'll call out Costco. I used to buy the albacore there. Now they have a preservative in it. Why is that there? Why? That's just one small example. If you look at items like Quaker Oats, for example, look at what's in an American version of Quaker Oats and look at what's in a European or British version of it. You'll see that the list of ingredients is far less in Europe than it is here. It's a very real thing. And most of those items you're talking about, preservatives or otherwise, are studied on their own. They're not studied in combination with other agents.
Oh.
That's true, especially of herbicides and pesticides too, which are also in our food. I used to work on a farm. I know. I've seen the effects of those things on my relatives at times, believe it or not, where if you use enough herbicide, there's a good chance you're going to come down with a disease from it. One of my cousins ended up with Parkinson's disease because he was a believer in some of that methodology for spraying on fields. It's a real thing. It's actually a real thing in our area here in the inland Northwest, where they use aerial planes to spray the fields.
Right.
Because it doesn't all stay in the field.
Really?
Really. When you're driving down 395 and the plane is spraying and you smell it in your car,
right,
you probably got a dose of it. So Anyway, I don't want to get too far off track,
Right.
but the point behind this is if you grow your own, you know what's in it, you know what you put on it, and
Right.
you own it. So,
Right. So, if you were just beginning to look into food storage, what would be the first thing you would do?
well, I would be looking at a place to put it because you're talking about a year or more supply of food if you're going to put it up. And where are you going to put that? What kind of conditions are you going to put that in? You've really got to be wary of heat. Heat will degrade your food rapidly. You also have to use the oxygen absorbing pads for much of that so that it keeps the moisture content down. But heat will degrade your food quicker. So if you can find it, or excuse me, if you can store it in a cool, dry place, meaning above 32, but not above 55, idyllic. You can do really well that way. Yeah.
Okay. So, one thing that I've noticed is, like, for instance, the Red Cross and FEMA and also, I can't remember the other government agency, but they are actually posting now for food storage, and they're recommending 3 days. And that's my reaction. Okay, I look at Hurricane Sandy, and if you had 3 days supply of food, well, the catastrophe lasted for more than 3 days. There was a lot of grocery stores that weren't open, so you really do need more than 3 days supply, and you need to be thinking along those lines, and even in an apartment or a small house, you can find areas that are darker, more isolated, where you can store your food. But as you mentioned earlier, you need to also be very careful about rodents.
For sure. I'll just share with the audience, a friend of mine, he has been big on food storage for a long time, and he had food stored in Mylar bags. And those are wonderful, but you have to watch out for rodents. He thought he had it covered because he had them in some of those big Rubbermaid bins that had a top on it, but he stored those on top of each other. And the result was there was just a tiny, tiny crack, maybe a quarter inch, half inch, that emerged. He didn't see it, of course, because this evolved over time. The mice got in there. He lost $1,000 worth of food. Gone. Because you can't, once the mice get into it, you obviously can't salvage that. So that's something to be very concerned about is rodents. Light exposure for certain things is also a big deal. You want to keep it cool and dark, not having a lot of sunlight in the room, that kind of thing.
So, I had mentioned the 3 days that like the Red Cross is suggesting. What would you recommend? What do you suggest for an audience or people who are just starting out in food preservation?
Well, let me address the first part of that. The average American only has 3 days of food on the shelf. That's what they have in their refrigerator. They're expecting to go to the grocery store and pick up some more goods at that point. What I would recommend is that you look at the type of food you like, then you look at the nutritional content of that food. In other words, don't buy 300 pounds of Cheetos because you're not going to do all that great with that. You're going to get sick of eating Cheetos, and you're going to notice that you're wasting away because there's no nutritional content in that. I would, the Mormon Church recommends 1 year, and they've been recommending that forever, right? I would say 2 years is better, and let me explain why. Let's say there's a catastrophe, consistent with your show, there's a disaster of some kind.
Right.
It happens in December. So you start, okay, I got all this food out in the barn. I'm digging through it. I'm eating like a king. I'm gaining weight. Well, you got a year's worth of that. That takes you to next December. If you didn't plant anything in between,
right,
you're out of luck because you're going to starve on the other end of that. You better have 2 years, then you've got enough. And that leads us to the next part, which might be, are you in between able to raise your own food and supplement and refill what you've already consumed? That's how you have to start thinking about that.
I keep remembering back during the beginning stages of the COVID lockdown, going over to Winco, and I will never forget. I had
Going into an
run out of
office.
flour with my food allergies. I'm very limited on my food, so I had called up and asked him for a couple of bags of flour, and it came in. So I went to the Winco to pick them up, and when I got there, I was walking on one of the side aisles, and I was looking down, and all the canned food was gone. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It was absolutely crazy. So there was people running around like, I don't know, like animals, grabbing whatever they could, throwing it in their carts. And, you know, when I went up, I got my 2 bags of flour and put them on a cart and walked over to the line. Well, the line was all the way into the back of the store, and it took me 45 minutes to actually get up to the front. And I saw people buying the craziest things. The guy in front of me, he had 22 or 23 packages of chicken legs. That's it. I'm like, wow, you really must be the chicken. But, you know, it was just crazy because people had all their carts filled to the top except for him, and they were overflowing. People were nice. People were, you know, getting along fine. But, you know, the thing is, what if Winco couldn't refill their shelves?
Oh, you're out of luck.
Right.
That's when the whole thing breaks, and then you're on your own, and you have to rely upon what you have and your skill set that we're talking about, including raising your own food. You may have to go and harvest wild game in those conditions. And, you know, there's a lot of information about what more you could do with both of those. In other words, if you had to harvest wild game, you know, today hunters and those kinds of things, they don't necessarily make the full use of the animal.
Okay.
And there's a lot more they could be doing with that. And I think I sent you a piece on that. And when we harvest a deer, let me tell you what, there's not an ounce of that wasted, but there were still things that I learned from that article that people may need to take advantage of if things get like that. And it comes on.
And I will post that link
Sure.
on the webpage.
So, I mean, I know we're talking about food storage, and I don't want to get too far down that.
Right.
But anyway.
So, what types of food do you recommend storing?
Well, you know, like a couple things. One of them, you want to look at the nutritional content of what you're buying. And what I mean by that is it's not all created equal. You want some that is, if you look at beans, some beans actually have vitamin C in them. Right? Like monk beans.
I didn't know
would be one of them. That's something you'd want to have around, right?
Okay.
Even if you don't like them that well, you'd definitely want to have that available to you as a supplement because you may not have any other source of vitamin C.
I'll look into that.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
At least that's what the label says,
Okay.
and I believe everything I read.
Of course, I do too.
But look at the nutritional content of what you're doing. Look at the potential for long-term and short-term storage, because not everything can be put up for long-term, right? Meats are not a good example of something that you're not going to be able to store beef jerky for 10 years.
Right.
It isn't going to last. It's going to go bad on you. So that is how I would approach that equation for sure.
Yeah, well, one thing I've learned because of my allergies, I can't buy anything prepared. I mean, it's real simple. You know, I will never go and buy beef stroganoff or, you know, like what is it? For Patriots, they have chicken stroganoff or beef stroganoff or whatever, all these different things. Well, there's all kinds of ingredients in there I can't touch.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we have done is my wife and I have set aside the raw ingredients. So for freeze-dried, we have gotten like tomatoes and freeze-dried milk or freeze-dried like banana chips or mango, whatever, all these, you know, and then we also have pastas, and I have flours so I can make my own bread, things like that, set aside in long-term storage, you know, buckets and different things. And this way, not only do I know exactly what's in my food, but I'm also not getting any hidden ingredients, and I'm not also getting empty calories, which a lot of those prepared meals like that are empty calories. They might look good on the package, and they may even taste good, but you really need to know, like you said, you've mentioned more than once, the nutritional value of that item is a big concern, especially in a situation where you're upset. Things could be getting crazy. You need energy, and food is a huge thing during that time.
Well, sure. I would just recommend Twinkies, Steve. I think.
Well, you'll never rot.
Well, I think there was a film that was kind of post-apocalyptic, and they were all seeking Twinkies because they knew they would last forever. But unfortunately, they don't have a lot of nutritional value beyond sugar, and you do need more than that. One of the things I was thinking about on the way over is the nutritional value of our food that comes in, I would say, large capacity that you get at the grocery store. Those items typically, unless they're organic, non-GMO, they lack nutritional value. That's why you're seeing people are gaining a lot of weight in this culture, because they're seeking nutrient and all they're getting is calorie.
Okay.
That's a proven point. I mean, we know that the foods that are raised today do not have as much nutrition as those of old. And your body is seeking nutrient.
Right.
I'll give you an example, and this one's kind of way out there, but maybe not way out there, but I for some reason decided to have some cashews.
Okay.
And I'm not really somebody who seeks out that kind of thing, but I had some, and I couldn't stop. And then I looked at what was in them, and then if you look at the labeling, it has copper, it has magnesium, and all these different things that I probably wasn't getting from other sources. So I just kept plowing through that, and then all of a sudden I just quit. So your body will tell you what it needs, but those are vital things that you need to keep going. And if you don't get it, calorie is one thing, nutrition's another. I think that folks lose sight of that sometimes.
Yeah, that's really important. So in food storage, I kind of look at it as there are two types. There's long-term and short-term storage. And for me, early on we focused on long-term, so that would be like freeze-dried or Mylar bags with beans in it and rice and things like that for long-term. So you can store them for 25 years, should you need to. But then since we had our long-term pretty well established, we went ahead and we looked into short-term, which to me is like going in and canned green beans, or canned fruit, fruit juice, things like that. And so what do you see the advantages of either? And if like one person I listened to, she really recommends buying, if you're really on a budget and things are tight and you're just starting, just buying 5 cans a week. Buying 5 extra cans of beans, 5 extra cans of fruit, 1 can of each, whatever. This way you're building your pantry without breaking your budget. But what do you see the advantage and disadvantage of either?
Well, I call that dollar cost averaging, right?
Okay.
Of your food storage. That's really what we're talking about. You're contributing a consistent amount, and you're picking it up when you go into Walmart or wherever you're going. So that's a smart way to do it. And then you have to take a marker and write the date on it.
Right.
If you're buying the canned goods, for example. And some of those, we talk about long and short-term storage. I can tell you I've eaten salmon that was way past the dating. I mean, it had almost 5 years of dating on the can, and it was nearly 5 years past that.
Okay.
I still ate it, and I'm still here.
You glow in the dark, but
no, it was there was nothing wrong with it. It didn't have as much flavor. It's not going to taste like a brand new can of salmon, but it was edible. The main thing to look for in a can is what? Is puncture.
Right, and rust. If there's rust or a bulging lid. Yeah. If it's bulging, throw it. Right. If there's rust on it, throw it. But yeah, I've actually eaten Costco beef that was like 7 or 8 years past the expiration date or the throw-out date, whatever. And again, like you said, the taste wasn't as good, but I didn't die. And there's actually been studies done on that you can look up, and I will try to put links in for it, where it shows canned food it degrades, it doesn't go bad.
Right.
And so you don't get the nutrients, but you're not going to die. So,
and that, on a side note, that's true of a lot of medicines too, especially in pill form. If you keep that cool and dry, it'll work for a long time afterward. I know they have to put a dating on there, and pharmacies have to throw out whatever after a year past the dating or whatever it is. But the bottom line is that you can use medication, and I've got one at home right now that's 10 years past the dating. I still use it, and it's fine.
Okay.
Still works fine. And so to each his own on that one, but just an FYI. When you go and when you're talking about long-term storage, then you're talking about 30 years potentially.
Right.
And that should probably be in a can. That's proven.
Okay.
And you can get that, for example, from the Mormon Cannery. I'm very aware that they are expert at putting that together, and they say it's good for 30 years. They drop one of those little oxygen packets in there and seal it up, and we're done.
I will admit I was shocked because a person I listened to on the internet, she recommended the LDS, and I had no idea they existed, that they did freeze-dried food. So I went and visited their site, and when I came across their apples, I actually thought it was a mistake. I did. I thought, something's wrong, because a can or a case of apples was $72 with shipping. Well, each can had 1 pound of freeze-dried apples. Well, if you were to go right now to the brand I used to buy, it's 7.5 ounces per can, and that can is $45, one can. So that can, times 6 is 270 bucks for a case. Whereas if you buy it through the LDS, you're paying $72 and you're getting a pound versus 7.5 ounces or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot beat the prices. They don't sell meat, but they sell beans, they sell wheat, they sell noodles, lots of fruits and vegetables. So that is a great place to go.
And there are others. If you subscribe on YouTube to Canadian Prepper, he's always talking about his favorite,
right,
freeze-dried foods. There's a lot of options. I think you've mentioned to me Jace Medical for your medicines.
Right.
Those kinds of things are available. Mountain House is another one. That's the name of it. That's widely available.
Yeah, we bought Thrive Emergency Essentials and Honeyville, and we've tried several of their products, and they're all, those three are excellent products. But again, we buy the raw product. We don't buy like beef stroganoff. We buy the noodles and the beef and the milk or whatever to make up that beef stroganoff. But those are good companies, and I will put links that people can follow.
Sure.
If that is an option. But if money's tight, then canned food is a great way to go, and then you start looking into other things like homegrown foods.
Right. And that's really your best bet.
Thank you for joining us on the first of many interviews designed to help save lives through education. For those wanting to look further into today's topic, the links will be provided below the video on our YouTube channel and on the resource tab of acatastrophicevent.com. Please remember to like and share and leave a comment on this video. Thank you.